Hi, fourth grade. Today we're going to be practicing adding and subtracting mixed numbers, okay? So let's quickly go ahead and review. First of all, what is a fraction? Well, hopefully you remember that a fraction represents a part of a whole, okay? And we usually write a fraction with a number on top, a number on the bottom, and a fraction bar in the middle. The number on top is called the numerator. The number on the bottom is called the denominator. So the denominator represents the total number of equal parts. The numerator represents the number of equal parts that we are looking at. So 1 out of 2, or 1/2. Okay? Let's quickly review what is a mixed number. Well, a mixed number is when we have a whole number and a fraction. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working with today, mixed numbers. And then lastly, we are going to review what an improper fraction is. So an improper fraction is when that number on top, that numerator, is greater than the denominator. So we have more than one whole right here. I also want to remind you of this really important fact down here that says, in order to add, subtract, or compare fractions, they need to have the same what? They need to have the same denominator, okay? So when we look at fractions, the first thing we always want to look at is the denominator if we're going to be adding, subtracting, or comparing them. So keep this important rule in your head today as we go through the problems, okay? So again, we are practicing adding and subtracting mixed numbers today. And I know you guys are going to do a great job with this because there are only 3 simple steps. The first thing you need to do is make sure that your mixed numbers are aligned. So if your mixed number is written, the long way, you're going to want to stack them on top of each other so that they're aligned like this problem right here. You want your whole numbers to be on top of each other and your fractions to be on top of each other, okay? So once you've aligned your problem, step 1 says right here is to add the fractions. So just like we do with normal addition, you're going to start on the right. So here on the right, we see our fractions. We see 6/10 and 2/10. And again, we need to look at that denominator. In order to add them, they must have the same denominator. And in this case, they do. Okay, so the denominator 10 stays the same. We can go ahead and add the numbers on top. We can add the numerators. 6 plus 2 is 8. So step 1 is done. We've added the fraction side, which is 8/10. Now we're going to go ahead and move over to the whole numbers. Well, this should be super easy for you. 2 plus 1 is 3. So we have 3 and 8/10 as our answer. And some of you might say, oh, I'm done. But those really, really good mathematicians, when you see a problem like this, you're going to recognize, oh, you know what? 3 and 8/10 is not in simplest form. That fraction 8/10 right here, I can simplify that. I can reduce it to an equivalent fraction that is more simplified. So that's our third step. We have to write it in simplest form. So when we look at starting to simplify 3 and 8/10 right here, you don't need to worry about the whole number, okay? The whole number is going to stay the same for now. So what we need to do is we just need to simplify the fraction side. So over here I've written our fraction 8/10. And for those of you that remember how to simplify, you have to find the GCF, right? The greatest common factor. Maybe some of you are starting to memorize some of the GCFs. So if I made my T-chart, I would quickly see that the GCF of 8 and 10 is 2. That's the biggest factor that they have in common. So now I'm going to go ahead and divide the numerator and the denominator both by 2, because whatever we do to the top, we do to the bottom. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the most simplified form of 8/10 is 4/5. This is an equivalent fraction. So then that tells us our answer is 3 and 4/5. That's the best answer for this. So let's review the steps one more time really quickly. Step 1, we add the fractions, starting on the right. Step 2, we move over to the whole numbers, add the whole numbers. Step 3, we need to look at our answer and ask ourselves, can we simplify it? The answer is yes. So then we go ahead and find the GCF, divide, and we have our fraction, or our mixed number in simplest form. Well, the nice thing about addition and subtraction is that they're so similar that the steps stay the same. So here we see our subtraction problem. We have the mixed number 2 and 6/10, and we're subtracting 1 and 2/10. So if it's written like this, again, we want to align it. So right here we've rewritten it, we've stacked our fractions on top of each other, we've stacked our whole numbers on top of each other. And so step 1 is going to be the same. We're going to start on the right, and we're going to subtract the fractions. So we have 6/10 minus 2/10. Well, looking at our denominators, we see that the denominators are the same. So we can just go ahead and subtract. We write our denominator down here, tenths, and then we subtract our numerators. 6 minus 2 is 4. So our fraction portion is done. We have 4/10 written right here. Now we're going to jump over to the whole numbers, and we're going to subtract 2 minus 1 is 1. So now we have this answer of 1 and 4/10, but we are not quite finished yet, right? We need to simplify. Looking at 4/10, both of those numbers are even, so that means that they can be reduced. They can at least be divided by 2. So again, we're going to write our fraction 4/10. We need to find the GCF, the greatest common factor, the biggest factor that they have in common. The factors are the numbers that go into both of these numbers, the numbers that are multiplied to get these numbers. And in this case, the GCF, again, is 2. So we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 4/10 in simplest form is 2/5. And we see that written right here. Our simplified mixed number is 1 and 2/5. Let's go ahead and try a few practice problems. So what I want you to do right now is I'd like you to pause the math video and write these two down. They've already been aligned for you. Look at those denominators. Notice, are they the same? Do I need to make them equivalent? And then go ahead and add. Okay, so go ahead and pause your video. Okay, so adding these fractions, hopefully you got 13 and 6/6 over here. But oh my gosh, what do we know about 6/6? What is 6/6 equal to? Well, 6/6 is equal to 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 13 plus 1, and the most simplified form of this mixed number actually becomes a whole number. The answer is 14. So if you got that correct, give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. This next one over here, when you added the fractions, you got 2/4. When you added the whole numbers, you got 13. And then again, we want to divide 2/4 by the GCF, which is 2. When we simplify, we have 1/2. So our answer is 13 and 1/2. Hopefully some of you are starting to see patterns in fractions, and if you know that 2 is half of 4, in your head, you're automatically, deciding, I know that 2/4 is 1/2. I don't need to find the GCF and divide. So hopefully we're creating, some of those relationships in our minds. Good. Okay, here are 2 more challenge practice problems for you. Notice this one you're going to have to realign in order to subtract. Make sure to always check your operation. Know that you're either adding or subtracting before you get started on your problem. Okay, great job, 4th grade.